Good morning and welcome to another edition of Daybreak on Trust TV. It is a fresh week, a fresh day, a fresh start right here in the Federal Capital Territory. We're excited to have you here on this show. My name is Dashan Husseina Usman. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a beautiful morning here. This is Abdulaziz. Abdulaziz, welcome to the show. Thank you for staying with us.
Okay, so I just want to know what level is your fuel gauge at right now? At what level?
Yesterday I was telling myself that these days, actually I was on a phone with a friend, and I asked about light. They said I had light, and I said congratulations, and
yes,
he was
for
laughing.
The past few days.
I said, well, these days, if you have light and you have a fuel, you got fuel, and you should be congratulated because it's been really terrible. But I was really lucky. Last night, I had to stay through the night to fill up my tank at a station. So,
wow. Aren't you lucky? I feel like it's like phoning from your tank.
These days you pay. I was musing to myself. I said, you beg, you struggle, you pay to get fuel, and you still feel happy when you come out that you have gotten.
I miss the days when, when you needed to top up, you just,
exactly,
go into,
effortlessly.
Yes, I'm telling you, go into the station and then in like 5 minutes you're done.
That's
These
true.
days, it's like nothing is actually being done about, absolutely nothing. Like fact, it has become a norm. Yeah. You go and queue for hours and you might not get, because I actually did queue last week, and after staying for almost an hour, I was told that it stopped,
wow.
giving
Yeah, sometimes if you are unlucky. And I actually, let me tell you a secret. I was musing this morning as I was coming to the studio that I hope we will not be talking about fuel queues because it has become so perennial. It actually doesn't look good that we always talk about it.
It
but
doesn't. But that's the reality, the sad reality, exactly. And a lot of people are actually facing it. And it's not just the fuel, the queues as well. There are places where once they start giving a fuel, you will not be able to pass. And you end up you're not queuing for fuel. You end up spending hours just to pass
exactly,
a particular
like my experience last week.
All right, so yes, good morning once again, and we'll move on with the highlights for today. Now, INEC rejects Akpabio, recognizes contender as APC senatorial candidate.
Inspector General of Police has deployed DIG, 4 AIGs, others for the Ekiti governorship election.
Villagers gunned down in Benue, houses set on fire. And let's move on to the first story. The Independent National Electoral Commission has rejected the primaries which produced Godswill Akpabio as the All Progressives Congress candidate in Akwa Ibom North West Senatorial District. Akpabio, who stepped down for Asiwaju Bola Tinubu presidential candidate of the ruling party at the convention of the ruling party, was declared winner of the senatorial primaries conducted on Thursday. The state's APC chairman, Mr. Stephen Ntukekpo, had said he was directed by the party at the national level to carry out a rerun over alleged infractions. According to the result of the rerun senatorial primary elections, Akpabio emerged winner with 478 votes, while DIG Ekpo Udom, retired, who won the first primary, secured just 3 votes. But speaking with Daily Trust in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital, on Sunday, the resident electoral commissioner, Mr. Mike Igini, said the commission would only recognize the winner of the primaries monitored by INEC. He denied the claim that the commission monitored the rerun APC senatorial primaries, where Akpabio emerged winner.
At least 11 people have been killed by terrorists in Igama community of Edumoga, Ehaji district in Opoku, local government area of Benue State. Locals said terrorists besieged the community at about 4 a.m. Sunday and opened fire on the villagers. They reportedly set almost all buildings in the vicinity on fire. The villagers claimed that at least 11 dead bodies had been recovered, while efforts were being made to find missing persons. Chairman of Opoku local government area, Amina Audu, explained that the invaders operated in the community between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., adding that they burnt down all the houses in the community.
All right, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, on Sunday directed the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of the Force Criminal Investigation Department, Johnson Kokumo, to take charge on the election security in Ekiti State before, during, and after next week's gubernatorial election. Baba ordered that Kokumo be assisted by 4 Assistant Inspector Generals of Police, 3 Commissioners of Police, 5 Deputy Commissioners of Police, and 18 Assistant Commissioners of Police. The police boss also ordered mobilization and deployment of adequate police personnel, armored personnel carriers, technical capabilities of the police air wing, the Force Marine, mounted troops, K9 section, and other operational assets. In a statement on Sunday by the Force spokesman, Olumuyiwa Dejobi, the senior officers are to coordinate human and other operational deployments in the 3 senatorial districts, 16 local government areas, and the 2,445 polling units in the state.
Now, moving on, the Katsina State Commissioner of Police, Idris Dauda Damban, has visited Kwari village in Jibia local government area of Katsina State. The village was attacked last week by terrorists numbering about 150, who killed 1 person, abducted about 100 people, and rustled an unspecified number of animals. Abdullahi Yamadi, who was with the commissioner, now reports.
The police commissioner is undertaking this on-the-spot assessment to ascertain the level of damage done to the residents of the affected community. Despite the level of devastation, the police boss in Katsina is emphatic that news on the attack on Kwari community was over-exaggerated, blaming some sections of the media, not Trust TV, for blowing the attack out of proportion. CP Dabang points out only few shops were burnt down during the attack, while the number of people abducted is yet to be ascertained. Similarly, the police authority picks holes in earlier reports which claimed that the village was deserted following the dastardly attack. On the contrary, the police boss is alleging that the long-term relationship between the villagers and the terrorists went wrong following recent arrests of some hoodlums by security personnel.
And from all indication, I think the people of this village or town have been fraternizing with these bandits. They are always here, they buy food items here. And one day, the day the incident happened, they were here for long. They didn't call anybody to say that this is what is happening.
The CP warns that the fight against terrorism will not succeed if there is no support from citizens, especially in insecurity-prone communities.
They say, we are even told that sometimes they will go to other villages outside this place and may commit offense, attack people, and the people here will not tell anybody. And as I earlier said, we only work on the information of the citizens. If something is happening, even as we are here now, if something is happening at the other side of it, if we don't, how do we go there? So that's exactly what happened.
Residents of Kwari community narrate their ordeal and are calling for the deployment of security personnel to prevent a reoccurrence of the ugly attack.
Akalla mashin ya kai 150 ko da 60 sun cika gari layuka baki daya.
The terrorists came on motorcycles, robbed people of their money and other valuables. They also killed 1 person, abducted about 100 people, and rustled unspecified number of animals in the process.
Sannan bayan ya je asibiti ya rasu. Allah ya mai wa'adi.
As you can see, they have killed my neighbor and burnt down this provision store. What we saw on that day was terrible and devastating.
It would be recalled that Trust Television News had reported that some displaced persons from Kwari village Mostly women and children were taking refuge at an IDP camp in Jibia town. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has called for deep reflection by Nigerians on the nation's representative government as the nation celebrates this year's Democracy Day. The Vice President made the remark at an interdenominational church service in Abuja, where he urged citizens to be more committed to building a country desired by all. Shafiq Suleiman reports.
Renditions from various choir groups heralding an interdenominational service to mark this year's Democracy Day. The Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, is represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. He underscores the imperative of celebrating the day and calls for deep thoughts on what he called a turning point in Nigeria's history. That turning point, he points out, brought about transition from military to democratic rule.
An interdenominational gathering of this sort is an important way to mark this special anniversary of our nation's democracy, largely because the values of justice, equality, fairness, and inclusion, which underpin democratic governance, are also at the heart of our Christian faith. A day like this, set aside to commemorate Nigeria's transition from military rule to democratic governance, gives us an opportunity to reflect on how far we have come as a people.
Reading from Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 39, representative of the leadership of the National Assembly, Nkiruka Onyejocha, reminds the faithful of the need to have a strong belief in God in whatever circumstance they find themselves.
Who is even in the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for your sake are we killed all day long.
The 2022 Democracy Day celebration began with a Friday prayer at the National Mosque, followed by a presidential address, and is expected to climax with a special Democracy Day parade scheduled to hold on Monday, the 13th of June. Shafiq Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Still on, members of civil societies in Osun State on Sunday held a peaceful rally in Osogbo, the state capital, in commemoration of the annulled June 12 presidential election. Another event in Osogbo, also commemorating June 12, was attended by the state governor Adeboyega Oyetola, Adeboyega Aomolo, and the Oluo of Iwo, Oba Abdurrashid Adeole Akombi. The report.
Exactly 29 years ago, June 12, 1993, the presidential election was adjudged free, fair and peace was annulled by former military president General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. This led to massive protests across the country. The acclaimed winner of the election, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, popularly called MKO Abiola, and his wife Kudirat Abiola, died during the regime of General Sani Abacha while struggling to reclaim the mandate. In 2018, President Muhammadu Buhari decreed 12 June as the nation's Democracy Day in honor of the sacrifice of MKO Abiola. In Osun State, youths and other citizens joined members of Osun Civil Society's coalition in a procession in Osogbo, Osun State capital, to mark just 12 annulment.
29 years years ago, June 12 came on board. And what necessitated that June 12 was a popular resolve of the masses of our people to change the course of history.
The chairman of Osun Civil Society Coalition, Comrade Wahid Lawal, urged the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to ensure free and fair election in the state next month.
So far, so good. 29 years after the annulment of June 12, 1993 election, at least we are having 23 years of uninterrupted civilian rule. So at least we are no more under the jackboot of any military.
Comrade Wai Saka urged government to address insecurity and protect citizens.
In terms of security, the Nigerian government need to work hard. In terms of unemployment, they should brace up. In terms of creating an enabling environment for people to thrive, government should work seriously. We want a government that will give us a level playing ground.
Comrade Wale Adebisi, while explaining how he escaped death during the June 12 struggle in 1993, the essence of the struggle has not been achieved.
I witnessed the Ikotu massacre. I witnessed the Ikeja massacre by the military. When the military launched at the police, they now face the masses of agitators with armor tank. And many people, several dead bodies were recorded.
Comrade Ige Olusegun said MKO Abiola promised hope in 1993 and that Nigerians are still hoping for a better Nigerian 29 years after. Meanwhile, the state governor Adeboyega Oyetola, Adeboyega Awomolo son and Oluo of Iwoland, Oba Abdulrashid Adewale Akombi, attended another event organized by the state government to mark the June 12 in Osogbo.
As Nigeria marks the 2022 Democracy Day, a cross-section of Gombe residents say the state has recorded some achievements under democratic rule. Created in 1996, Gombe State has so far had 4 governors, including the incumbent Inuwa Yahaya, who have all contributed to bringing democratic dividends to the state. Ibrahim Ismail reports.
Since the return of democracy in 1999, let Abubakar Hashidu emerge the first civilian governor of Gombe State. He was succeeded by Danjuma Goje in 2003, who served for 8 years and handed over to Ibrahim Dankombo in 2011. The incumbent governor Inuwa Yahaya was elected in 2019. Speaking on Democracy Day, some residents of Gombe State said it has been a fruitful journey so far.
We have university in Gombe. Before democracy, you don't have it. And we have airport in Gombe. Before democracy, you don't have it. Even water. Before democracy, we don't have it in Gombe. But now in Gombe State, we have regional water that supply from the Dadinqua to Gombe.
But there are a lot of achievements that we got in democracy. And then democracy also failed us. Due to the insurgency, the corruption whatsoever, all is equipped in the democracy. But before democracy, we don't observe all this kind of mess in our life.
Although he admitted that the state has made reasonable progress, a political analyst says the state still has more to offer the people in terms of development.
We cannot also deny the fact that there are sporadic achievements here and there, particularly if you look at it from the state perspective achievements. The 36 states, if you assess them, you find that some states are far better than before in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of human capital development. So definitely we are not going to say that it's total fiasco, but rather it's a mix of we got some and we failed in some.
Nigeria's Democracy Day was usually celebrated on May 29 before President Muhammadu Buhari changed it to June 12 in honor of late Moshood Abiola, who was believed to be the winner of that annulled June 12 presidential election of 1993. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
It's been Daybreak on Trust Television. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be back after this short break.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching Trust TV, Right now it's time for the newspaper review. And today on the newspaper review, we have a lot of national dailies that we will be focusing on. But just before we move into that, to give us an analysis on the stories on the front page of these particular dailies, we have Ali M. Ali, Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors. He's our guest on this segment today. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Good
Yes.
morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start. Let's start with Daily Trust newspaper. We'll start with the lead story that we have here, and it talks about Democracy Day. Nigerians seek more dividends. We must get it right in 2023, says governors. We also have riders that say, don't use religion, ethnicity for campaign. CDD tells politicians. Abiodun Fintiri free 46 inmates. And if you take a look at the pictorial just below this story, you'd see a picture of arrival of first flight carrying pilgrims from Nigeria in the holy city of Medina. Beside the pictorial are more stories. Many killed, houses razed in Benue attacks. Bandits abduct 50 wedding guests in Zamfara. DIG, 4 AIGs, 3 CPs, others for Ekiti governorship election. And below the pictorial there, terrorists killed 55 ironmongers in Borno in 3 weeks, says police. And we have writers that say, how we thwarted plans to bomb Abuja, Kaduna, says defense chief. Mixed reactions as Owo indigene links attack to missed targets. Southwest governors urged to re-energize Amotekun. And right above the page, we have more hardship for Nigerians over rising inflation, power cuts, food shortages, says World Bank. And nationwide outage as electricity grid crashes to zero. These are some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. So we will forward some of these stories to our guest in the studio today. Yes, our reviewer in the studio. All right, so let's talk about the lead story. Today is Democracy Day. Yesterday was Democracy Day, but it's been celebrated today. So, Nigerians, so far are saying that, they have not seen dividends of democracy and asking for more. What's your thoughts on democracy in Nigeria?
Well, I share in the pessimism of most Nigerians that 23 years now, since the dawn of this republic, we've not seen in concrete terms the dividends of democracy. So I share in the pessimism and reservation of most Nigerians. Because democracy, well, they say it's a process, but in the last couple of years since the dawn of democracy, Nigeria has been the worst for it. One would dread to imagine how Nigeria was under the iron fist of military rule and contemporary times. What I mean, if you look at all the indices of development in the last 21 years, they have not only nosedived, you see the quality of life has similarly taken maybe worse hits. Nigerians now look at all the indices of development and then look at even the indices for good governance. Well, people say, yeah, democracy, especially the kind we practice, presidential democracy is expensive, and then the nation's economy, that the presidential democracy is actually the function of a stable economy, which in the last couple of years has been anything but stable. But if you look at it, what has democracy brought in the last 21 years or two? When I say when I question the delivery of democracy, I'm not romanticizing military rule, no. But look at it on a platter. When you look at it, what has democracy brought to Nigeria?
Okay, well, I think we'll actually discuss more on that.
Yes. I wanted to say we'll discuss more on this later at the next hour. But before we move on, there's one of the writers on the front page of Daily Trust is saying, has the story of the Center for Democracy and Development, one of the pro-democracy think tanks in Abuja, asking politicians not to campaign based on ethnicity, religion. As we move into the next election, what are your thoughts regarding this issue of religion and ethnicity in determining who gets the 2023 presidency?
Well, I think it's important. It's an ideal, and I think Nigerians should share that ideal, that we should move away. Let's campaign on issues, not the usual fault lines. When we harp on the usual fault line, we'll not get it right. But you see, worldwide, dependent, there will be that one politician who would harp on differences, on what divides the people. In other climes, if you go to even advanced democracy, if you go to the UK, you go to the US, there are always segmentation along race, along economic class, status. There will always be that segmentation. But unfortunately, what we do here in Africa, and in Nigeria especially, is to harp on the fault lines. People are not saying this is what we're going to do for you, but they want to say, no, you are this, you are that. And when you harp on these fault lines, you more often than not, you get what you wish, because in the process of annexing state power, people deploy whatever sentiments they have at their disposal. But once they access an annexed state power, that's when they turn around and preach unity. What the CADD actually is doing is something that an agency like the National Orientation Agency should have been involved in. The progenitor of NOA, National Orientation Agency, MAMSA, in 1990, well, in the 90s actually, did a lot of work in getting Nigerians to focus on the real issues, not on these issues, well, if you like, cosmetic, if you like. Because if you look at really Nigerians, are we really truly divided along ethnic and religious lines? If you given our recent history, especially post-Civil War. Because if we look at some of us, my generation, product of integration, and even younger elements, they don't really see through this narrow prism. And that's why if you go out there in cyberspace, young millennials, young Nigerians, is only politicians of the old hue, of the old color, who are given to regionalism, that have on this idea, you are this, you are that. But we have new Nigerians who are totally oblivious, product of integration, like my generation, and even before the millennials, who see Nigerians truly through different prism. Now, if you look at product of federal government colleges, products of inter-ethnic marriages, product of unity colleges, they are so intertwined. They have made friends across the Niger, built bridges over the years. So it's even unthinkable. We have them. Let me just narrow this to someone like Sunusi Lamido Sunusi. Sunusi Lamido Sunusi, a prince from the royal family of Kano, attended a Catholic school in Kaduna, primary school, went to King's College, attended ABU. And then look at, they have people of his generation like that. They think Nigeria. But you see, this is very crucial now. This idea that, well, like you said, think tanks like this. But you see, it's one thing, sometimes they say, it's one thing to lead the horse to the river, but can you force the horse to drink the water? You understand? So it's important, it's an ideal Nigerians ideally we should subscribe to. But you see, some of us are already converted, my generation, like I said. But you see politicians, especially the old hue, this is the only way they know how to get to the voters.
Okay. All right, so let's take more stories, and we're going to merge three of them in one, talking about insecurity and terrorism. We've heard of, on page 6 of, the houses that have been razed and people killed in Benue State, bandits abducting 50 wedding guests in Zamfara, and, terrorists, killing 55 ironmongers in Borno State in 3 weeks by police. And then we're actually talking about democracy, yes, yet these things are actually happening. What are your thoughts on...
Wow, you see, anywhere there is insecurity, it threatens a lot of things. Insecurity is key. And constitutionally speaking, the primary purpose of government is the provision of protection of life and property. But you see, Nigeria is challenged beyond what we see. Beyond, there is energy insecurity, there is food insecurity. Look at one of the headlines there in today's Trust, what the World Bank is saying. And Nigeria is not alone. If you look at globally, there is a global economic meltdown. Inflation, you can ascribe the factors responsible for the hike in inflation worldwide. But you see, what stares out in the face, and that's why sometimes when we look at we assessed this government in the last couple of years, in the 7 years that it has held sway and called the shots, if at all it has devoted energy alone to fighting insecurity. But beyond the physical security of the nations, well, the borders, the sovereignty of the country, there are other challenges linked to insecurity, like I said, energy security, food security, and then look at all of them. Nigerians are being challenged. Well, in my neighborhood, if you don't have alternative sources of energy, probably you will not even get light for, you won't get power for days on end. Today, the national grid has routinely collapsed. I'm just giving you one aspect of insecurity that people tend to overlook because we are so overwhelmed by this wanton killing, which is, I'm not saying in any way taking away, the value on human lives. But look at, people are insecure. So it's quite depressing when you listen to that. These are the things that will scare away all the time investors. So it's really depressing. But you see also the government, like it has been said before, it's being overwhelmed. Notwithstanding the assurances given once in a while by security top guns, like the Chief of Defense Staff, for example, now, maybe it's something that we should cheer. But really, it calls for no cheer when he said, I think one of the networks, which is captured in today's trust, that look, but for their vigilance, the Abuja and Kaduna and one other city would have been bombed. Yes, maybe this calls for some cheer, but incidentally, that's what they're there for. More often than not, you see how effective any security outfit or network is by the moment there is a breach, the moment there is a security breach, then that signals failure on the part. So the fact that when the absence of breaches is what would make security be something that people would cheer. So when you get headlines like this, then then perhaps it will take away whatever shine the government, take a lot of shine off the government. But when you have these serial security breaches, it takes away the shine of the government.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the Punch. Today's Punch newspaper, there the major headline says APC may unveil Tinubu's running mates Wednesday. Party focuses on Northeast. It has riders. One says party won over Muslim ticket. Majority leader says no cause for alarm. BP shall come from Northeast. Governors focusing on the zone. Ado Dogwa, lawmaker. APC may concede Senate President to Southeast. Speaker to the Northwest. Then on top of the page, at the very top, FG's borrowing from CBN hits 19 trillion. Inflation may worsen. A story on page 33. Below that, there is a story of blackout, which was earlier reported in the Daily Trust. Blackout worsens as grid collapses 5th time in 2022. Democracy Day, governors demand credible elections. OPC don't decry feeding bottle federalism. Riders to this story, it will take a century to fix, it will take a century to produce another MKO Abiola, says family. Insecurity, corruption threaten Nigeria, nothing to celebrate, says Kaigama. This is a story this is a story on page 12 of today's Punch. Then just by the masthead, contributory pension gains 640 billion in 4 months hits 14 trillion. Story on page 35. Then another story on page 34. FG invests 379.6 billion in 23 states erosion control. The pictures on the front page of the Punch capture the story that is just below the pictures on the Owo massacre, which happened last weekend. Owo massacre, churches record low turnout, beef up security, can hold special prayer. You can see the Ondo State Governor Rotimi Akeredolu visiting some of the victims, as well as holding prayers with officials of Khan in the state. Below the pictorial, FG was wrong to shut Nigerians' borders, says Deputy President of Freight Forwarders Association. On page 12, strike, FG meets ASU today, Sanu Friday. Club shooting, IG condemns Banner Boys, police escorts, orders probe. A story on page 12. Well, these and many other stories can be found in today's The Punch. So let's quickly look at the major story, the issue of running mate for Tinubu, which has been dominating discussion since Tinubu's emergence as the flag bearer of the APC. What do you think of this issue of Muslim ticket? It's been very naughty. A lot of extreme positions have been taken. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me just say, because you see, in this country, just a while ago, we were talking about the CADD we shouldn't campaign along, politicians. But you see, in our climb, the face here, and the faith, what you believe in, they count. So you can't be insensitive to these sentiments. The face and the faith, they count. So in order for people to have sense of inclusion, you have to respect that. But how did it even become an issue now? In 1993, and indeed before 1993, under military regime, people have made this allusion to the time Gawan was military. But that was military, number 1, 2, 3, 4. Even under Buhari as a military dictator, number 1, 2, 3, 4, were all Muslims. Under Gawan, 1, 2, 3, Gawan, his deputy, the chief of army staff at the time, and then under Buhari, Idiagbon, Babangida was chief of army staff, chief of naval staff, well, it was late Aikomo, but then you see 1, 2, 3, but this were a military regime, ruled by force of decrees. Now, but then look at it again in 1993. I used to say, and I still hold on strongly to this, that in Nigeria, and indeed any part of the world, politicians look at numbers. They don't look at faces. They don't look at faith. They look at numbers. The man who brings in the most votes is the one that is likely to be, but post-1999, these sentiments, sentiments have taken sway. They have taken center stage. And especially now, we have the social media in the mix. Without the social media, perhaps things might be a little bit different. But with the social media in the mix, and social media, like we all know as reporters, as journalists, social media is more often than not, when it comes to politics, you see utopia. What I mean, utopia, people mix generously fact and fiction to drive home their point, which more often than not, they misfire. And out there in cyberspace, the sentiment dictates otherwise. Some of the millennial, young generation, they see, unfortunately, they've been manipulated over the years by these politicians of the old order, of the old hue, to think first ethnic, second religion. But if you look at it, really, when it rains, it pours on everyone, whether you're this, you are that. And then if you go along segmentation, even same faith, there is so much segmentation now. In some parts of the country, if you belong to one denomination of a faith, chances are that you may not prosper politically speaking. People will gang up because you have the same faith, but different denomination. We've seen that happen even in the northern part of the country. There is a cleric here in the northern part of the country who openly said it's better to strike a deal with someone of a different faith than someone who they share the same faith but different denomination. So you see, so it's important to balance, because of contemporary realities, to balance the ticket along this, well, if you like, this in recognition of the constitutional recognition that Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. Now, this is where I think Tinubu, coming down finally to Tinubu, would have a lot to do, a lot of balancing act. A lot of balancing act. Here is a Muslim from the southern part of the country seeking, will he replay what happened in 1993? Is it possible to have, but you look at Abiola, you look at Tinubu, and then you look at even those who are pretending over the transition. Under a military regime, Tinubu pulled off what amounted to the ninth wonder of the world.
Not Abiola.
I beg your pardon, Abiola pulled something that in contemporary times may be impossible. And then look at how even he did that. And then look at even the sophistication, especially of the Kano voters and the northern voters as a whole. Look at their sophistication. In Kano, Tinubu defeated Son of the Soil.
Defeated.
Oh my goodness, Abiola, I keep on making reference, I don't know, So Abiola defeated Tofa, an indigene of the state. He defeated it in his ward. What does that tell you about the sophistication, one, of the people of Kano, two, about Abiola as a person? Now, fast forward to 2022 and eventually 2023. Look at Tinubu. Tinubu has had a very cordial relationship with the government of Kano. I'm not talking about the people of Kano now. With the government, and this counts for something. And indeed, in some other parts of northwest zone, in Katsina, Tinubu is very well received by the government of Katsina State and elements there. So now, according to this story, how would he balance it, getting a northern Christian? Yes, it's good, it's strategic if he goes to northeast, according to the report here. But in the northeast, who are the likely people who will bring in the most? We are talking of votes here now. You see, necessity, when it comes, like they say, when the desirable is not available, the available becomes desirable. So this is where it's going to be. Some people, the naysayers of Tinubu will say, what stopped Tinubu becoming vice president in 2015 is likely to stop him becoming president in 2023. Unfortunately, this is not my view. This is what had happened in 2015 when he couldn't pair with Buhari, another Muslim, to be vice president. Okay. And that's why it necessitated the ascension of Osibanjo. So I don't know how they're going to pull this.
Okay.
But it's important that he balances the ticket.
All right, so quickly before we move on to the next paper, I want you to share your thoughts on these stories. Kaduna Rivers, 30 others attract zero foreign investment in first quarter. And then we have the federal government, the deputy president, freight forwarder, saying that the federal government was wrong to shut Nigerian borders. Share your thoughts, or do you see a correlation besides insecurity? By the way?
Kaduna, Rivers,
yes, and 30 others.
And 30 others.
That's like,
well, the thing is, I
that
think
means only four states attracted
yeah.
foreign investment.
Well, you see, people put their money where their mouth is, like they say. It's a common thing here. There must be a reason. But you see, in some other places, like notwithstanding, look at Kaduna, for example. The biggest thing you will say that Kaduna, like I think Trust did a story here not too long ago about how the Northwest completely cut off. I mean, it's a known go area for foreign, what do you call them now? They have a name.
Expatriates.
Yeah, expatriates. It's directly linked to insecurity. You understand directly, there is a direct relationship between foreign investment. Because look, capital will not go where there is insecurity, when you don't feel comfortable. That's the nature of capital. Capital goes where there is security. And when I say security, beyond even the physical, we talk about energy costs now. And then, more importantly, beyond energy, beyond the physical security, energy cost, because you can't be borrowing, like people make this joke, that Nigeria is the only place where Nigerians power their businesses using sources of energy, only to pay the electricity company bills for energy not supply. So you see there is this relationship between insecurity and the reluctance of investors to invest. And look at some of the investors when they come. They only go there because they have detected a loophole where they make fast money and then retreat. In the last couple of years, actually in the last 2 years, businesses, foreign businesses, are actually divesting. ShopRite served notice that it was going to close shop, if you remember. Why? Because notwithstanding, look, they have, and consumers are here. But you see, beyond all these issues of energy security, physical security, also the question of integrity, trust deficit. People entrust with their businesses, they sabotage it. This is so much in the marketplace, unless people want to play ostrich, there is deficit in integrity, in trust. You entrust people with your businesses, they wreck it. It's unfortunately, and I don't know, but I think it's not uniquely Nigerian thing, it's an African thing. I remember, is it Mo Ibrahim now, making allusion one time during one of these interaction, one of these colloquium about the trust deficit in African businesses. That's why some people go outside the shores to hire managers, to hire people who will manage their businesses. Because if you trust indigenous, there's the expertise, but unfortunately, there is no trust. And like most big business tycoons, owners said, people like Warren Buffett, people like, what's his other name again? They emphasize the importance of integrity. Integrity. If people managers are they have deficient integrity, then capital will not come. And we know whoever run a business in Nigeria and Africa the first thing he will tell you is that people he hired, somehow there are so much leakages, unless we are very vigilant all the time. And, so it's understandable if they attract zero investment. Okay. Now, for the president of the freight forwarders, you see, Nigeria, a lot of people say at the time Nigeria closed its borders, it even was in violation of certain ECOWAS protocol. You understand? But you see, there must have been a reason. Sometimes, a while ago, I was just saying that something about availability and desirability. Sometimes, when there are nations there that deserve the right, government, to look at what are their existing challenges. When the government shut its borders, it actually checked the influx of illegal arms. It was in the public domain that helped in checking. But then, you see, even at that, freight forwarders they may not admit it, but Nigeria is so porous that there are so many illegal borders. How do you man them? We've seen instances, footages where rice is being smuggled on the backseat of motorcycles, and then in tons and tons of illegal. So yes, when Nigeria closed its border, well ahead before the outbreak of Corona, some people say that was even a masterstroke. But when Nigeria closed its border, what did it do differently? When it closed its borders, did the government take advantage of that for the reason it closed its borders? Well, that is the question people should be asking.
Question for another day. All right, so let's move on to this paper, This Day newspaper. On This Day newspaper, the lead story, you have pictures of presidential candidates, some presidential candidates of various parties, and it says, on your marks, here are the 17 finalists. And then just below that particular story, you have Nigeria too deeply troubled to be handed over to Tinubu, says ex-PDP legal advisor. And then at the top there, you have Goldman Sachs forecasts oil prices to surge to nearly $140 in weeks. And then National Power Grid collapses again as discos apologized. We have Owo killings. Southwest governors meet and declare 3 days mourning. And then Bakari here says, I confidently wear my zero vote as a badge of honor. And we have Oshibaja, others to Nigerians on June 12, use democracy to strengthen national unity. Now, let's talk about this story on Goldman Sachs forecasting oil prices to surge to nearly $140 in weeks. What does that mean for us here in Nigeria? Because for some of us, in 1 week, we actually saw diesel price, actually increase in less than 1 week.
Bad news for most Nigerians, because ordinarily you will say we want to jump for joy if the global oil price is soar. But each time it does that, there is this is inversely, proportional with Nigeria's fortune. What I mean for Nigerians, not Nigeria, as oil prices attract, soar, the problems of Nigerians also is directly proportional with our suffering, because that means because of the subsidy regime, government, this is the tragedy we're in, the vicious cycle. oil that is native to us, we should be jumping for joy anytime it rises, because we are the economy.
That's what I also wanted to ask you. Yes. Like, shouldn't we be happy that the prices are going up, maybe meaning more earning for Nigeria?
Yeah, more earning, more trouble, because we're not refining. Yeah. We are not refining, because see, what we do, we take the crude out, then we've said it, I think, in this forum.
Yes, as it is, we can't meet up to the production.
Precisely, and we can't do that. That means we also have to, because of the subsidy regime now, we also have to buy at the international price. Unfortunately, in the last couple of months now, NNPC has been making zero contribution to the federation allocation, because it's making whatever profit it makes is to subsidize consumption. And this is self-inflicted tragedy, because the refineries are not working. They have zero refining in the last couple of weeks, notwithstanding the humongous amount of money devoted to turnaround maintenance. So as oil prices go up, Nigeria's misery level, if you like, if there's anything like that, the misery level also goes up, because like you said now, the cost of diesel because has been completely deregulated, is prohibitive. You can't even, it's unimaginable, you can't afford to run. I wonder how businesses run on this very expensive, at global price, diesel, for example. So as it rises, Nigeria's misery index also rises, and Nigerians will be the worst for it.
So are we still blaming the Russian-Ukraine war for these surges?
You see, the thing is, it may have played a very insignificant to me, because if you think, you plan ahead, and that's why government is there. Government plans ahead, just like when you head a family, when you're a family man, you plan, you look at their needs, and then you forecast. But then we have a situation, government is more often, not starting with this one, knee-jerk reaction. It has been said before, whoever inherited the mess the PDP was leaving behind in 2015, we're going to come to this pathetic stage. So, and then we have also a government that is not planning, not thinking ahead, always knee-jerk reaction. Every now and again there is a gap in the economy, or there is a deficit, then the next thing is to do, go a borrowing.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Ali Amali, Deputy President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Unfortunately, we have to draw a curtain on this segment of the program. We'll be back on top of the hour, where Ali Amali will still be with us as we discuss more on other issues of national importance. Do stay with us.
Residents of the Federal Capital Territory are hereby alerted to the activities of scavengers, also known as Babambula, which security agencies have identified as a high-level security threat to not only the residents but also to our infrastructure, as they perpetrate petty stealing and acts of vandalism on public utilities. More so, they are drug peddlers, serve as spies to terrorist elements, and are ready-made tools for the public disturbances, during which they attack people with dangerous weapons. The Federal Capital Territory Administration therefore reiterates that the ban on scavengers, aka Bababula, operating within the Federal Capital City is still in force. These miscreants are advised to stay off the streets of the Federal Capital City for their own good, as defaulters will be apprehended and prosecuted, including parents of underage children involved in these practices. Relevant agencies are carrying out enforcement of this ban as stipulated. Be law-abiding always. Let's together build the FCT of our dreams. Management announcer.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Good morning and welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman. Thank you so much for staying with us.
It's a beautiful morning indeed. Thank you for joining us. I am Abdulaziz. Good
All right,
morning.
now to the highlights at this hour. INEC rejects Akpabio, recognizes contender as APC senatorial candidate.
The Inspector General of Police has deployed DIG, 4 AIGs, others for the Ekiti governorship election.
Lynn Grant becomes first female winner on a DP World Tour. And with that, we'll move on to the details of the stories. The Independent National Electoral Commission has rejected the primaries which produced Godswill Akpabio as the All Progressives Congress candidate in Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District. Akpabio, who stepped down for Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, presidential candidate of the ruling party at the convention of the APC, was declared winner of a senatorial primary conducted on Thursday. The state APC chairman, Mr. Stephen Ntukekbo, who had said he was directed by the party at the national level to carry out a rerun over alleged infractions. According to the result of the rerun senatorial primary election, Akpabio emerged winner with 478 votes, while DIG Ekbo Udom, retired, who won the first primary, secured just 3 votes. But speaking with Daily Trust in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State Capital on Sunday, the resident electoral commissioner Akwa Ibom State, Mr. Mike Igini, said the commission will only recognize the winner of the primaries monitored by INEC. He denied the claim that the commission monitored the rerun of APC senatorial primaries where Akpabio emerged winner.
At least 11 people have been killed by terrorists in Igama community of Edumoga, Ehaje district in Opoku, local government area of Benue State. Locals said the terrorists besieged the community at about 4 a.m. on Sunday and opened fire on the villagers. They reportedly set almost all buildings in the vicinity on fire. The villagers claimed that at least 11 dead bodies had been recovered while efforts were being made to find missing persons. Chairman of Opoku local government Amina Audu explained that the invaders operated in the community between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., adding that they burnt down all houses in the community.
And finally, Sweden's Lynn Grant made history on Sunday with a 9-shot victory in the Scandinavian mixed to become the first female winner on the DP World Tour. The 22-year-old was 2 shots clear of Australia's Jason Shrivner overnight and extended her lead with a thrilling 8 under 64 during the final round. This saw Grant finish on 24 under par, well clear of compatriot Henrik Stenson and Scotland's Mark Warren. The mixed event in Halmstad is hosted by Stenson and Annika Sorenstam. The event has been on the men's European tour, currently known as the DP World Tour, since 1991 and became co-sanctioned with the ladies European Tour in 2020.
Still on the news, Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has called for deep reflection by Nigerians on the nation's representative government as the country celebrates this year's Democracy Day. The Vice President made the remark at an interdenominational church service in Abuja, where he urged citizens to be more committed to building a country desired by all. Shafiul Suleiman reports.
Renditions from various choir groups heralding an interdenominational service to mark this year's Democracy Day. The Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, is represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. He underscores the imperative of celebrating the day and calls for deep thoughts on what he called a turning point in Nigeria's history. That turning point, he points out, brought about transition from military to democratic rule.
An interdenominational gathering of this sort is an important way to mark this special anniversary of our nation's democracy, largely because the values of justice, equality, fairness, and inclusion, which underpin democratic governance, are also at the heart of our Christian faith. A day like this, set aside to commemorate Nigeria's transition from military rule to democratic governance, gives us an opportunity to reflect on how far we have come as a people.
Reading from Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 39, representative of the leadership of the National Assembly Nkiruka Onyejocha reminds the faithful of the need to have a strong belief in God in whatever circumstance they find themselves.
Who is even in the right hand of God, who also makes intercession for us, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for your sake are we killed all day long.
The 2022 Democracy Day celebration began with a Friday prayer at the National Mosque, followed by a presidential address, and is expected to climax with a special Democracy Day parade scheduled to hold on Monday, the 13th of June. Shafiul Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
As Nigeria marks the 2022 Democracy Day, a cross-section of Gombe residents say the state has recorded some achievements under democratic rule. Created in 1996, Gombe State has so far had 4 governors, including the incumbent Inuwa Yahaya, who have all contributed to bringing democratic dividends to the state. Ibrahim Ismail reports.
Since the return of democracy in 1999 let Abubakar Hashidu emerge the first civilian governor of Gombe State, he was succeeded by Danjuma Goje in 2003, who served for 8 years and handed over to Ibrahim Dankombo in 2011. The incumbent Governor Inuwa Yahaya was elected in 2019. Speaking on Democracy Day, some residents of Gombe State said it has been a fruitful journey so far.
We have university in Gombe. Before democracy, you don't have it. And we have airport in Gombe. Before democracy, you don't have it. Even water. Before democracy, we don't have it in Gombe. But now in Gombe State, we have regional water that supply from the Dadinqua to Gombe.
But there are a lot of achievements that we got in democracy. And then democracy also failed us. Due to the insurgency, the corruption whatsoever, all is equipped in the democracy. But before democracy, we don't observe all this kind of mess in our life.
Although he admitted that the state has made reasonable progress, a political analyst says the state still has more to offer the people in terms of development.
We cannot also deny the fact that there are sporadic achievements here and there, particularly if you look at it from the state perspective achievements. The 36 states, if you assess them, you find that some states are far better than before in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of human capital development. So definitely we are not going to say that it's total fiasco, but rather it's a mix of we got some and we failed in some.
Nigeria's Democracy Day was usually celebrated on May 29 before President Muhammadu Buhari changed it to June 12 in honor of late Moshood Abiola, who was believed to be the winner of that annulled June 12 presidential election of 1993. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
In spite of its significance as a historical strong national symbol conveying the triumph of democracy over military despotism and democratic tendencies, June 12, as National Democracy Day, has in recent times lost that symbolic relevance owing to the entrenched anti-democratic machinations perpetrated by Nigerian politicians. Today, despite 23 years of continuous democratic rule, the politics of absurdity, characterized by widespread insecurity caused by ethno-religious bigotry, a thriving culture of corruption, and a free-falling economy has made many ask, what is the benefit of democracy? What is the benefit of Democracy Day to the ordinary man? Where is the hope heralded by the historically adjudged freest and fairest presidential election that this country conducted on June 12, 1993? What has translated into making the day as Democracy Day? Questions begin for answers. We have in the studio joining us to discuss this issue as member of the Daily Trust editorial board, Dr. Tope Pashua. Good morning, Mr. Pashua. Good morning. And thank you for being with us. And we still have Ali M. Ali, the Deputy President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, who will also be joining us to discuss or to ponder over these poses that we earlier posed. Let me start with you, Mr. Pashua. What is the significance of this Democracy Day, or what should be the significance of this day?
Well, thank you very much. I think what should be the significance should be whether democracy has delivered for the people, what they call democratic dividends and so on. Apart from the symbolism, which, you know, we were trying to, at some point in time, solidify our democratic experience or transition back into democracy. Remember, for those who, we have a lot of young people these days, you know, most of them angry, but unfortunately, most of them have no benefit of history, you know. So the fact was that, okay, we were given our independence in 1960. The colonial power left us and said, look, guys, sort yourself out. But under 7 years, we were at war because at some point, some guys got it into their head and killed off the prime minister and some of his colleagues, you know, and this was difficult to manage under 5 years or 6 years. This had happened, you know. So what I meant was that we probably weren't mature enough to have been given that leeway to manage ourselves. And of course, the coup happened, the war happened, 2 coups and then a war and so on, which we eventually got out of in 1970. And of course, by then we were already under military rule. Military rule went on to 1979. We had another democratic experience. We tried it, but by 1983, December, that was over as well. And of course, we were back into military rule by 1984 up to 1999, which was quite an extended period. And so by the time we're coming back into this democracy, there was a lot of enthusiasm to say, hey, this has to stay. And even there was a sort of elite consensus to the extent that, look, this must work. And so they had a Democracy Day, which was May 29, which was the day that military handed over power in 1999 to the civilians. So it's been a bit tentative. So is it going to last? Is it not going to last? But it seems like this is the longest run we have had. However, there was this glitch in 1993 whereby a certain person, MKO Abiola, is said to have won the election, or believed to have won the election, but was not handed over to. This created a lot of problem in the Southwest, especially where he was from. Of course, there was a need to recognize that event, which President Buhari eventually did. And I mean, it was a brave move on his behalf and so on. So essentially, I think we should look away from the symbolism of democracy. Good for us. But hey, if every country is, or most other countries are run in democratic manner and we want to, what should be the most important thing is that democracy delivery for our people? Are our people better? Is the standard of living better and what have you?
Okay, Mr. Ali, now the idea about democracy is, government for the people, by the people and of the people. Now, would you say that this particular idea is alive, well, and kicking at the moment?
Well, you see, it's not a yes or no answer. Is a democracy alive? The culture, is it been observed in Nigeria climb? You say yes, well, there is periodic election, but for election, it has to be free. Look at, it has to be participatory. Democracy has to, all the elements, they have to come together for democracy because it should be all inclusive. You get people should be given, even if it's an illusion of choice. But we've had this in the last 22 years. We've experimented, I think 23 years 23. Now, with this brand of democracy. Some people have argued, and rightly so, and I share some of the sentiments they express, that what we have is civilian rule, not actual democracy. It's civilization, they call it, not democracy. And the argument is this: look, from the word go, people are prime, there are people or less. For example, look at the awesome powers governors can have. Governors have, and especially between 1999 to 2007. Some people will say, well, that was a transition from military rule to another semi-military rule. Under Obasanjo, we've had some instances where people who have not even stood for election were so inaugurated in the National Assembly. We've seen an instance where someone who did not stand for election actually becoming number 3 citizen. It's there. I can't even be specific. But you see, and that's why some people question how democratic is our own democratic experiment in the last couple of weeks. But by and large, you say, yes, there is a semblance, at least the military are in the barracks, and then people are given this illusion of choice. They can choose their own leaders. But you see, if I were to play the devil's advocate, more often than not, if you take every of the election that has happened in the last 23 years, especially beginning from 2007 till date, they've always been marred by so much irregularities. The 2007 election specifically was one of the worst we've had. Election, some people were declared winners before actually the votes were cast. It has happened. Even the beneficiary of that election, late Umar El-Adwal, at the presidential level I'm talking here, actually admitted that, look, the election that brought him to office was a bit marred by some irregularities. Overvoting, for example, stuffing of ballot, and then connivance by people who should ordinarily observe the best tenets of democracy. But then, so yes, democracy ideally is the government, like they say, defined of the people, by the people, and for the people. But unfortunately, it may, in Nigeria's experience, like my co-panelist said, the longest stretch we've had, 23 years now, you will say that so many things, there are some things that have been done in the breach. There are glitches, there are but then it's a work in progress. It's not an end to itself. It's a process. We've seen even advanced democracies where we have these occasional glitches where people also, in a way, beneficiaries of the system actually turn around to sabotage it.
Okay,
but by and large, you will say yes.
Let me go back to Dr. Fashua. And you ended your last intervention with a poser, and you asked if it is delivering to the people, if it is a delivery result. In tangible terms, what's your answers to this question that you posed yourself?
So, since I asked the question, I was answering myself. Exactly. That's a good one. Well, it's a mixed bag, but I would probably think that coming back of the politicians, you know, sort of what we've seen is a scenario where most of them are basically about, you know, taking care of themselves, expanding their own coasts and so on, you know, grabbing more opportunities and, you know, for themselves, many times in the name of the people. They call it my constituency. In the military era, what we had was a much leaner government, okay? A much leaner government, command and control, you know, the governors were in charge of their states and, you know, everybody fell into order, you know. But what we've seen now is a scenario where Nigeria is now in debt, in serious debt as a result of having to manage and carry all of this political baggage. It's incredible, you know, the amount of money we spend maintaining our politicians. And oftentimes there's this idea that, okay, through the politicians, the people will benefit. I mean, we have a National Assembly. What do people do? They go there and argue all day, and at the end of the day, the people don't know exactly what's going on and so on. And we also have scenarios where you see that President Buhari delayed. In fact, he just appointed like TCN board recently, you know, like, let's say a year to his departing. He refused to appoint boards for parastatals and so on because he felt that it was a waste, that these boards would just go there and just sit down and all. So it's a mixed bag. Of course, if you look at it, do you know that Nigeria's per capita income has almost remained the same for the past 20 years? That means that whereas the population is growing, but in terms of the GDP and the income of the country, it hasn't actually grown per se, commensurately with the growth in population. So, in fact, right now, as at 23 years ago, we were in the poorest country in the world in terms of human beings. Now we're dragging with India, in fact, but on a you know, comparative basis, we are the country with the highest number of poor people in the world, and in terms of proportion as well. So it's a mixed bag. I'll say that democracy, though, has allowed people to be able to speak, and in speaking up and agitating, we probably have been able to bring a few ideas from abroad. For example, now everybody is on, you know, using the GSM and so on. Under the military, people like David Mack felt that the phone was not for the poor, and nobody could challenge them. So perhaps if we still had military, everybody would still be living under that fear and not being able to speak out. However, we should also consider the fact that in a democratic regime since 23 years, this is not where we should be. I mean, your people interviewed someone in Gombe, and he was talking about the fact that now they have water, basic things like water. Now they have a university in Gombe State. But a university, you know, should it be such a big achievement? In my view, I don't think so. Water, it's an indictment on both the military and the civilians that the little that Gombe could achieve is like water. Because again, we don't seem to be understanding just how fast the world is moving and how everybody is leaving us behind. One thing I've seen in all of this is that we are people who don't want to do things ourselves. We believe that we can import development, you know. So over and above everything and the infrastructure we see, the development of the mind of the Nigerians has not accelerated as much as it should, whether under the military, they stand indicted, even though I think the cost of governance was lower, but even under the civilians as well, because we shouldn't still be talking about things like water and so on. Why have we been graduating people from universities when we cannot do our own water system? We have to bring the Israelis and so on. We can't do our own road. We have to bring the Germans. We can't do basically anything for ourselves, you know. That's where it is. So I think that there's a need for this kind of program to remind those who leave Nigeria just how slow we are delivering the goods to our people.
Okay, now, Doctor, earlier you talked about, the elites, amassing wealth for themselves. Now, can a society
the
politicians, yes. Now, can a society that has vast inequality between the poor and the rich still be called democratic?
Invariably, I think that, you see, the thing about democracy is, that when Churchill, it was who said that, democracy, all forms of government systems are bad, but democracy is the least bad, it's the one that people can manage, and everybody seems to be tending towards democracy. Even in monarchies, under monarchies like in the UAE, for example, they've tried to bring some voting for some of the sheikhs and so on, But so what that tells you is that if we had monarchy, we had military government, we had democratic government. Democratic government is meant to be the more intellectual of the lot, meaning that it's the one that should think in terms of more equality, sustainability of a society, what should work, So when you say that, look, that inequality should be a concern for a democratic government to say, we have to eradicate inequality. Like I said before, we have to invest in the minds of the people. That we shouldn't have, for example, so many children on the streets, not going to school. Under a democracy, it shouldn't happen. But I see that when you look at some of those things, they don't care. I had to quickly chip in that it's the politicians I meant. I mean, if you're an elite, you're in the private sector, in Dangote, you can't stop him from making his money. But if you are feeding on the country and the country is paying you, maybe through taxpayers' money or through natural resources, then I have an issue with you. In fact, Nigeria is one place that you see people go into office and they come out looking more robust and, rosy cheeks and all of that. Then you wonder how difficult this work is supposed to be. Because the real work of governance is a 24/7 work. People should not ordinarily, if they were doing that work well, to get 4 hours of sleep a day should be a problem. Especially in a country like ours, the problem never finishes. Where do we start? Is it insecurity? And someone did mention in the interview in Gombe State that, look, before democracy, we never had all these problems with terrorism. What could have happened? Either that the leaders did not understand that, look, they didn't look at where the society was falling apart until things went. A lot of it is economic in nature. People feeling disgruntled. Cattle herders having their cattle rustled and being left in the cold. I mean, Abdulaziz did some investigation on that recently, and nobody's speaking to that. Politicians not understanding their demographic and what is going on in their society until things blow out of proportion. Because indeed, we didn't have this security problem. So whether you're talking about security, you're talking about jobs,
education.
I've seen that education. Look at jobs. A lot of our politicians are very reckless in their statement. They'll tell you, the private sector will provide the job. And actually saying to them, the private sector did not campaign to the people. You, the politicians, campaign to the people. And the first responsibility of finding jobs for your people is with you, the politician. But of course, what you see is a scenario, they go there, we don't even know how much they're paying our members of National Assembly. We don't know how much we're paying our executive appointees. Democracy presupposes that some of those, information should be out in the open, and I hope we get there. But the time is fast running out, and you can see that society is almost buckling under so many pressures.
Well, Ali, if I come back to you quickly, if you look at, the Dr. Fashua painted a very solid picture of the Nigerian situation, a sort of a movement, a motion without movement. Why do you think is responsible for this state of the country?
Well, first, people will routinely blame the nature of the transition itself. It was too short at the time. Power transited from the military, 9 months, most 11 months, and then the military, the departing military. Well, at the time, the military had no choice but to depart, actually. The global trend suggested otherwise. To remain in office as a military regime, it was becoming increasingly not fashionable. So you see the horrid nature of that transition itself. And a lot of people never thought it was going to even endure. We've seen that happen in the ill-fated Third Republic, between when Babangida presided over the long, some people say, labyrinthine hide-and-seek kind of thing, and then he reluctantly departed, with culminating in an annulment of election that today, the day of that election, has now become the symbol of democracy. And that's why we're even here pontificating what could have, couldn't have happened. Now, so that glitch from the transition period threw up a lot of people who clearly, by their own nature, you know, somebody said, look, it's important to understand that Africans generally, that democracy is a mindset, that African mindset is autocratic, is feudal, that it's a process that unless we assimilate it, understand it, we will have what we're having now. Not just in Nigeria, but look around you. Ghana, I don't know, Ghana is trying to get it right. You understand? South Africa, given the nature of South Africa, how it fought apartheid, perhaps they're beginning to understand that. But in Nigeria, we still have the mindset of those who have superintended over the affairs, beginning with Obasanjo. Obasanjo made a public declaration that, look, to him opposition means enmity, that he would have to crush his enemy. And that's why under Obasanjo, the idea of even this gerontocrat presiding, and that's why he was referred to routinely as Baba. You look at Baba. When you approach, anytime my kids look at me, in my household, my kids call me Baba. Somewhere else, when they refer to Daddy, the mother will quickly question them. And even that idea, Daddy is more liberal. You understand? The thing that will come to you, Daddy is fond Dad, is fond Baba. But Baba is the African gerontocrat who sits atop and dispenses what is, yes, you understand? So this is the tragedy of the Nigerian democracy.
All right,
yes.
sorry to cut you short, but just before we wrap up this discussion, President Buhari spoke to Nigerians, you know, on the occasion of this year's Democracy Day. Let's watch.
On June 12, 1993, Nigerians saw the best in our citizens as we all went out to vote peacefully. By June 24, 1993, we also saw the worst of our leadership as the elections were annulled. We must never forget the sacrifices of the heroes of Nigeria's democracy during 1993. Their patriotism and peaceful struggle should guide our actions, especially when it comes to electing our leaders and holding them accountable now and in future. Fellow Nigerians, this is my last Democracy Day speech as your president. By June 12, 2023, exactly 1 year from today, you will already have a new president. I remain committed and determined to ensure that the new president is elected through a peaceful and transparent process. It is important for all of us to remember that June 12, 2023 will be exactly 30 years from 1993 presidential elections. In honor and memory of one of our national heroes for democracy, Chief MKO Abiola, GCFR, we must all work together to ensure this transition is done in a peaceful manner. I am hopeful that we can achieve this.
Okay, so just before we wrap up, let's start with Doctor. Can you share your thoughts on what the president said, like the final thoughts?
Well, I mean, he said all the right things, you know. He went back to the first question you asked on this set today about the significance of the moment, the significance of democracy and Democracy Day. He went on a kind of historical excursion about what happened, you know, where we're coming from, especially since 1993. And also he made a very significant, you know, comment that this is going to be his last address to us on a Democracy Day, meaning that, I mean, the gentleman was also going to rest, you know, in his ranch and what have you. So it is what it is. I think that no matter what, I mean, the last thing I'd like to say is no matter what circumstance we find ourselves, we should understand that this entity called Nigeria, okay, is sustainable, can be sustained, and can do a whole lot better. And I mean, this is one message I'm trying to put across, especially to the very, look, in youth, there's anger, okay? It's justified. Passion is the sin of youth, okay? Pride is the sin of middle age, and prejudice is the sin of old age. But the young people should understand that they have a lot more years to live than the older people, on the average. And therefore, they should, rather than everywhere I turn, you see the young people running down this country for one excuse or the other. Oh, this is a good time to break up the country if things don't go your way. And looking for Tinder moments where they can rush in the streets and people are burning things and destroying the same infrastructure that's not enough. So no matter what has happened, I think we need to connect with these younger people, Nigerians, and let them know that there could be hope, there is hope, and in fact, that they are the hope. I think that should be the message for the moment. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ali, let's have your final thoughts.
Well, what I pick in all of this is about the promise to have a free and credible election. Well, let's just hope so, because if the processes that drew up the party chairman of the ruling APC and eventually even the presidential flag bearer, if the idea of consensus and then juxtapose that with what the president at a point told the northern governor, I mean APC governor, that he should be allowed to name his successor. I think we should be very vigilant, really. This, I'm playing the devil's advocate here, because if the APC, the consensus thing about APC, will it give other Nigerians a level playing field, other contenders with the presidential election? So, having said all of that, you can see that the president is anxious to go home and rest, like my colleague here on the discussion said. The man is clearly tired. You could see that it was with an effort he was reading that, and hopefully by June 12 next year, 2023, he will be referred to as the former president. Already he's lame duck. He's an outgoing president. So some Nigerians will say, well, about time.
Thank you very much, Ali M. Ali, Deputy President of the Nigerian Guild of Editors and a member of the Daily Trust Editorial Board, Dr. Tope Pashua. We hope to have you another time on the show.
Thank you for joining us.
The program continues after this breather.
The terrorists that attacked the Abuja-Kaduna-bound AK-9 train on March 28 have released 11 out of the remaining 61 abducted train passengers after almost 3 months in captivity. Alhaji Tukur Mamu, the negotiator and media consultant to the cleric Sheikh Ahmed Gumi, said the 11 victims were released on Saturday. Now we have a security expert, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, joining us via Skype, to speak to us on this particular topic this morning. Good morning, Dr. Kabiru, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you and good morning.
So now 11 victims have actually been released. What does that signify?
Well, first off, that the discussion between the two sides, the event and the terrorist, reached an advanced stage, and that perhaps a certain level of trust has been achieved, which led to those number of persons. Also, importantly, it also confirms that a number of the abducted persons and by their release, often on the medical examination that would be conducted to them, it would tell us this with which they are in and how they out. Of course, that would also give us a vision of what the others who are going through at the moment. So, on the whole, and development.
Nigerians were expecting that the government will negotiate for the release of all the captives, and then we are having a piecemeal, release of these people. How long more, do you think we have to wait for, all these captives to be set free?
Unfortunately, it appears to me that we are negotiating from a position of weakness. Simple reason that the time that the captives have remained in the hands of their abductors means there's really not much we can do beyond, going through the negotiation process, which can be painstaking, especially where you are negotiating a position of weakness. It is at the mercy or the prerogative of abductors now to respond to request. So it will be really difficult to reach a conclusion on when process will be concluded. But again, significant development, whatever the terms of conditions of the release of this 11 persons, we can build upon that to release of the other captives. As someone who operates agents, what I know is that the only way you can achieve this in it would be better than what we meant, is to turn the slides in so that the pressure that were our advantages is what the other side has unfortunately been able to do that. This is a public, there's not much I can say beyond that, but all I is we should use intelligence, identify their pressure points, and use those pressure points to ensure the negotiation goes in our favor. It's pointless really to negotiate an adversary that has shown that to be brutal from an act of weakness. And this is a clear indication the time that the tests have stayed with the abductors, indication that our position is.
Dr. Adamu, you've said that the government is negotiating from a weak point. What do you think is maybe the government is doing wrong in the process of this negotiation?
The moment allow the abductors to take our cities in numbers, we are not sure of numbers, but currently it's somewhere near 6 and above that. The moment we are at a weak point, we have our citizens, they have weapons, and they've shown the propensity to do weapons. So we know that if we pressure them, they do harm to our citizens, our brothers, our sisters, our parents, and so that is what constraining us. And we have to find a way to ensure that that propensity for brutality that like I said earlier on, it has to be intelligence and the use of that intelligence. In the first place, if we wanted to negotiate from a position of, we shouldn't have allowed the abduction to take place. We allowed the abduction to take place. We also allowed them to hold their captives. You know, it's one thing to abduct. It's another thing to steal. Then it's also another thing to be able to captives. All of these things took place. They've been holding those captives for quite a long while. You know, these abductors will be able to hold this in these large numbers in rural space. So all of these are the right the government is negotiating from a position of weakness. You know, in Hausa we have this saying that when you bite, you are able to bite and successful in the biting, then you are likely to do more. And so this is the situation that we're in.
Reporters have actually said that you know, ransom was paid for the release of these victims. You know, do you think, you know, it's actually a possibility? And also, what is your take, you know, on, you know, the prisoner swap, which is one of the demands of these terrorists? Do you think the government would give in to their demands eventually?
So all of these things that you mentioned are options in negotiators. When they carried it, they had in their mind to perhaps carry out. So they already have a plan, and it is that plan that they are going through. When quest, one of the things we have is that family members, children in particular, were in the hands of government. Wanted those children released. They were specific regarding the children. In fact, them. And which was and then other demands perhaps associated. They knew what they wanted in terms of some. In certain instances, there may be financial runs too. Now, in a negotiation, what you do is you put forth demand, and then they put theirs, and you try to reach a compromise that is acceptable to all the parties. Now, it's true, and I emphasize this with all humility, that there are family members between 2 to 7 are in the hands of, then something somewhere is wrong. I cannot envisage a situation where government would have in its custody children ages of 2 and 7. If that is the reason why they did what they did, as a country, we deserve explanation from government. How come the ages of 2 and 7 are in the authorities? In fact, there were very specific an orphanage in Yola, in Adamawa State, where the children supposedly. I'm not aware if there has been any explanation by government allegation. I know I've heard from sources outside government that perhaps been identified in another state and moved to, you know, a location closer to the negotiation is taking place. Even the exchange of children may have led to the release of the 11, but we're not sure. My point is, these things are, you know, worrisome, and the fact that government has also kept quiet regarding those issues that have come is also extremely worrisome. Beyond the role of negotiating, identifying the triggers of identifying the reasons why the abductors were moved, they did what they did, so that we put measures to a reoccurrence in the future is absolutely. I think we deserve to hear from government in terms of some of the issues. And recall that a couple of months ago, and about 2 months ago, the president actually order or direct the security agencies to specifically the Railway Corporation and Importation to set up that would attend to the needs of the family adopted person. I'm not aware that of some that are still, and vague to us would have been made by now.
Dr. Adamu, before we wrap up, while these captives are in custody, terrorist attacks around the country have keep happening. Just yesterday, the police in Borno, Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, said that at least 55 ironmongers scavengers were actually killed by terrorists in the state, and elsewhere in Zamfara state, we have reports of abduction of at least 50 wedding guests. Why do and of course also not forgetting the O attack last weekend, which led to the killing of about 40 churchgoers. Why do you think that the security problem is still, has become like one big monster in which we are having all manner of attacks and issues all over the country? Why this spread now?
Okay, there are several. Time will not allow me to go into detail what these factors are. And just my consultancy released a monthly report, and it showed 913 were killed in the month of May 2022, which was the numbers that were killed in April 2022. In April, about 1,000 plus persons were killed, so almost about some 56% reduction. Now it's still worrisome that 900 are being killed in a month in one. These are citizens, brothers, sisters, parents of us. So more needs to be done. The reasons why the killings are happening are as a result of unaddressed. There are huge grievances. Some of them are structural. For instance, if you discuss with persons and they are interested in a constitutional, restructuring, different ramifications, frankly, and time will not allow that. Others are political. As an example, you pick Kogi State, the Galas and Ibra. If you go to between the Benue, between Idoma and Chief. And likewise, in several parts of Kaduna State, Southern Kaduna, and the rest of Northern Kaduna, those issues are rooted, and they provide a platform for sowing and for non-state actors and to achieve what they achieve. Others are economic, especially gap between the haves and the have-nots. It also allows a huge pool by non-state actors, and then there is also a component where exclusion of certain social segments of the society also allow, and unfortunately these grievances are being state actors. The second one is climate change, inability of both the federal and state to implement measures allow the adaptation and consequences of this effect of climate change. Talk about, for instance, the receding lake, how it's affecting, and then of course also allowing certain elements within the society to be vulnerable. Crime, like we're seeing in the northwest, the desertification is pushing both farmers and hard move into the south and affecting in a manner that is driving conflict and proliferation arms and light weapons, drug addiction, porous borders, the ineffective criminal justice system that is failing to offenders. Name them. So these are that allow insecurity to track. One I will mention is perhaps stability within the governance, especially as it affects the security sector. Talked about 900 plus persons being killed. Before then, about 1,400 being killed. I'm not aware that one single person within the security has been held accountable to those. You talked about the killing in Zamfara yesterday, or rather, it was actually in Sokoto between Bakura and I'm not aware that anyone has been held accountable. Abduction, the train abduction that in March, I'm not aware that one single has been held accountable, or even government of the service, the railway corporation. So name them ramifications of government department. Impunity happens, offenses, people drop the ball, incidents, people are killed, but not one person is held accountable for it. So that, in itself is a contributor to the insecurity. You start holding persons accountable, then the persons who will come to replace them will know that if they drop the ball, they are likely to, face certain consequences. They will sit up. It's a very simple reaction and element of mind. But because we don't do that, things ought to happen at the rate they're happening. The security sector is one of the sectors within governance that lacks money evaluation. Even though they would argue, those institutions within them, that they have internal mechanism M&E. But in my honest opinion, internal mechanisms are not working. And I've just given you this. You are a journalist. If you know of entities where security officials have been to, you can tell me and the whole that's listening.
The security expert, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, joining us all the way from Lagos via Skype. Thank you so much for your time. All right, with this, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same station. I'm Dasha and Husseina Usman.
Thank you for staying with us. See you tomorrow. I am Abdulaziz.